Good morning, campers. What a beautiful day to be outside. Except, please don't. Kids, until we get this bee situation under control, all activities have been moved inside the Cabrini cabin on the far side of the lake, where the green team will host the following activities. Let's see here. There's hook hand crochet, portrait painting with honey, survival class, and oh, god damn it! Helen, did you leave the door open? The bees! Helen, the bees!
Hi, welcome to Bunk 237, the made-up camp we live in where all we do is wear shorts and sit in the dark and talk about horror movies. I'm Tuyet.
And I'm Robin, and joining us today is Troy Walker. He's a stand-up comedian who's appeared on The Late Late Show and the Just for Laughs Festival. Troy, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. So this week we watched Candyman, a romantic story of interracial love and acceptance.
Sure.
No, it's about a grad student who accidentally conjures up Candyman, a supernatural serial killer, and is then terrorized by him. Released way back in 1992, the film was written and directed by Bernard Rose, based on a short story by Clive Barker, and with an excellent score by the inimitable Philip Glass, who apparently hated the movie afterwards. I think his opinion softened, like Philip Glass's opinion softened, I think in later years after it got really popular, but I think at the time he thought it was a real low-budget slasher. Did you guys see it when you guys were younger?
No.
No?
I did not see it when I was younger. The first time that I watched it was actually like this February. It was one of the very early pandemic quarantine movies that I decided to watch just because I think I'd heard that by then about the Jordan Peele produced, reboot, and I was curious about the original. So that's why I watched it the first time.
Troy, when did you see it? Did you see it?
This is the first time I've ever seen it.
This is the first time you've ever seen it?
First time I've ever seen it. I love horror movies, but this is one that I missed, I think, because I was a child when it came out.
It was definitely very early 90s.
Yeah.
So it is July 2020 right now.
Mm-hmm.
How is Candyman hitting us? How is it hitting now? I'm so fascinated because you guys saw this recently. I saw it when I was a kid, so like now coming back to it. Yeah, I saw it when I was in high school. That was very cool. So it was so coming back to it now. I think already knowing the kind of general story and kind of what was happening, I sort of watched it from probably a much more critical eye as an adult. But it is sort of, I think, an interesting watch now because it is the worst year to be alive.
I just thought it was bad. Like, I wanted to I was like, because I didn't, honestly, I didn't even really know anything about it. So, like I was like, I guess, there's a Candyman and he's probably bad. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh, shit, this black dude? And I was like, oh, man, this is like the blackest horror movie before us. Like, I can't think of one where, because usually, especially like of those kind of classic ones, it was like, that's like where the joke always came from, right? It's like the black dude dies first. Like there's one black character and then, for whatever reason, he's gone to a cabin in the woods with a bunch of white people and then he dies first. And so it was kind of cool to be like, oh, okay, this is like this whole other thing where almost all of the other characters are black except for like the main lady. And like I thought the idea of like a haunted project is hilarious. That's like it's such a cool, fun idea. But I also thought like Candyman's backstory is fucking stupid.
Yeah, no, honestly, all those things are fair. And it is like, I think Candyman is noted as like in sort of horror movie history as like the first time that the movie monster is a black man.
Yeah.
Right.
I think like blackness had been alluded to in different like monster forms, but every other sort of like supernatural killer was Jason and was Freddy and was Michael Myers. And I think that was a big deal when it came out. And I think because it dealt very directly with race and race issues, like it was not like the social commentary is like very thick. It's not subtly about race.
Right.
And I think at the time it was big. And I think for me as a kid, I really, I think I thought about this as a child, why I liked horror movies so much. And I think part of it I realized as an adult was because horror movies were a place where I could see like non-white characters in like lead roles. Like growing up in the 90s, I loved the like Candyman and The People Under the Stairs, and other movies where like women or even even in the Halloween movies when like Jamie Lee Curtis is like surviving all the way through. And I realized as an adult, I was like, oh, there must have been, I think I must have seen something in that as a child that like brought me back to horror movies.
I think I watched it the first time because the conversation around it had sort of come around again, and I didn't know what it was. Like Troy, I think I was like, oh, Candyman, probably some like stupid slasher movie. And then I heard like, oh, it's this sort of race-focused historic movie in a lot of ways. And then I watched it and had a lot of complicated feelings about it and was like, is this really the movie that like people think revolutionized Black characters in horror movies? And then I watched it again yesterday and was like, no, I think this movie is the problem.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah, because the problem is that it is a stupid slasher movie.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
There are...
which, like, you kind of want to... obviously, like, there should be stupid slasher movies with Black characters that... like...
Right.
I mean, I'm very, like, not, like, un-PC, but, like, I'm highly unlikely to, like, look at something and go, like, well, this is problematic. Like, I don't really look at the... Like, I'll look at it and be like, this is, like, silly and dumb. And so I didn't feel like... I wasn't looking at it going, like, any sort of things that I think maybe seemed, like, racially dated were sort of just funny to me. Like... I was like looking at it and being like, man, that graffiti's terrible. They should have researched this better. The graffiti that doesn't look like real graffiti. And then but a lot of it was like production things hitting me different because you could really see how low budget it was even then. You know what I mean? Like there's like that one scene where Virginia Madsen's character and her like partner on the project are hanging out in her apartment. And then she goes like, look at this view I have. And it's like, just like a painted wall. It's like clearly just like buildings drawn onto like a wall. And they're like, wow, it's amazing. I was looking at it like, this is...
It definitely, I like that I thought every scene looked like a set. Every apartment was like, that is definitely a set.
I also like one of my horror movie pet peeves, because I love the genre, but one of my pet peeves, one of the things that will always make me start to be like, fuck this movie, is when characters make silly ass decisions. And I was watching it going like, well, why the fuck, you know better than that.
What was the worst decision you think that was made? Like on Helen's part?
Well, I mean, even, like, some of them are, like, small. Like, like, when she wakes up in the apartment covered in blood and the dog's head is severed, and there's, like, a cleaver laying there.
She grabs the
cleaver. She's like,
up.
I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. And goes walking around the apartment like this, and then be like, oh, no, it wasn't me. Like, shit like that, like...
Yeah, the one that really got me is when Candyman kills the doctor, and then she just decides to climb out the window. Like, she's like, where are you going, girl? Like, what?
Yeah.
What's
like
the plan?
That kind of thing where you're just like... I mean, I would like, the doctor gets killed, and then Candyman's like, I'm gonna undo your restraints. Like, if it was me, I would be like, I need to figure out how to get these restraints back. Also, that, like, I would be like, well, how do I... This is my chance to prove it wasn't me.
Right.
And I get that, like, they're doing that partly because she needs to escape, but also because it's how you make sense of it, right? Where you go, well, we'll have him undo her restraints. But it was, like, one of those things where I was like, I feel like there would be security cameras where they could be like, oh, and there.
Right.
Right? Like, am I wrong? Like, I would think that, like, in, like, the psych ward of a hospital like that, where a doctor is meeting with a patient who's been murdering people, probably
Alone in a locked room.
Yeah, you probably have, like, a camera.
You would think.
Maybe they went back to it later. Something for me that I could not stop thinking about was like, how is Candyman taking care of this baby for a month? Like the baby is
I thought about that too. When he goes back to it, I was like, it's been a month.
It's just like this like apparition just like changing diapers and feeding this baby. And does no one hear this crying baby in this empty apartment?
I have no idea. There was just like stuff like that where you're kind of like, what? And then some of the things were just things that were just like funny to me.
One of the things that got me every single time was the sheer amount of blood that they splattered everywhere.
Yeah.
It was comical.
Yeah, and bad looking blood.
Which I think I really like because I like that the movie is goofy, and maybe it's like, maybe it wasn't supposed to be goofy. I don't think when Bernard Rose, the director, was making this, he was trying to make like a fun comedy horror. But it is so fun because it's like kind of just bad enough to be fun. You know?
Fucking terrible.
I think that one of the reasons that I didn't love it so much was because I think it does so much more than it meant to. It does like a lot of things that I don't think it was meaning to do.
Like what?
Like it's all kind of getting back to the race thing, but it's like just there's no clear like thesis to the movie itself. And I think Helen's character was painted as the sympathetic heroine, and I think she, in a lot of ways, is not that person and not that character. She's kind of this entitled, like, I'm gonna walk up in these projects and people are gonna give me all the information that I want kind of person. And I was just like, you gotta chill out. And like, you know.
And she brought her like black friend to the projects with her.
You know, that's one of the things where I was watching it and I was like, man, that's like one of the most realistic things in this whole movie. Because a lot of times, like I even had this, I was thinking about this. I remember I had to go to Kansas City for this like trial for this comedy festival. This is like 9 years ago. And Elliot, who Tuyet knows, was rolling with me to this comedy festival. And Deacon, who used to be the new talent coordinator at the Comedy Works back in Denver, was like telling us we had to get barbecue at this one place in Kansas City. And that it was, and I guess it was like in the hood. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going there. And Wolsey was kind of like, and it was sort of like, I don't want to go places where I don't know the rules.
Yeah.
Because for me, I got to know the rules. And like, it was like, yeah, Elliot will just look like a gigantic police officer.
Right.
But like, I have to be aware of like, you know, like what are all of the different things? Like, I'm not just going to a hood.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
I think Helen really comes across as like thinks she's invincible, kind of like entitled Karen character.
What I think is so funny about it and so accurate because there's that scene where they walk into Cabrini Green and her black like co-writer or whatever, I don't know, students, whatever. I don't even know what really their relationship is. It's like they're friends, but also they're working on this thesis together.
They're both grad students, I think, right? Is the thing?
Yeah, they're both grad students, but they're like partnering together on this thesis. Yeah. But I thought it was funny that the black girl is like worried when she like get there. She's like, we shouldn't be here. I don't like this.
Yeah. And
not because of Candyman, but just because of like, we could totally get robbed. And then another girl's like, no, it'll be fine. And I was like, that's super accurate.
Yeah. Because I also like that Helen was also like, look, they made this like housing project. It's like such a problem, but like we're gonna dispel all these myths about it.
She's got a real like white savior thing going on.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
little.
really walking so fearlessly into this terribly graffitied like hallway.
Here's a story about that I thought of when I
Yeah?
watched this movie. When I was in high school, I had a American literature ex teacher, and she was like kind of young, and she had been from Chicago. And I forget how it came up, but I was talking about, and she was like, "Oh, Capri Green, yeah, they had like the best food. I used to go and get soul food there," and I was like, "This white lady's out of her mind." And it was like the same. It was like that exact kind of life where she was just like, "Oh yeah, I used to go and get food." I was like, "What the fuck?"
But I don't know it. I don't know if the movie like we all see that now, but I don't know if the movie itself meant to paint Helen that way. Like she was really like, I think they really tried to force the like she's the protagonist here thing, where I was like, she's kind of not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
but I thought it was also interesting because they are kind of giving her shit for it a little, because she is that whole thing, and then she's like, "Oh, we'll be fine," and blah blah blah. And then they get robbed, and the dude like hits her in the face, and, and she's sitting up, and it was laughing so hard because they have this lineup of black guys going, "Step forward, number 2. I'm the Candyman. Okay, go ahead and step back. Step forward, number 3. I am the Candyman. Okay, go ahead and step back." So they do the whole thing, and then she goes, "It was number 5," and then we just never hear anything else about it. Like, it's like, yeah, that is kind of how it. Basically, the kid is like, "Oh, the Candyman will get me," and then they give you a real life guy who calls himself the Candyman, so that you go, "Well, the kid's just afraid of." So it's playing with that whole like, is the urban legend a real thing? Then they put the guy in jail. So then when the Candyman keeps popping up, when you actually, because it's after that the actual Candyman shows up in a parking lot. But I also thought that was interesting that like
That he appeared in a parking garage.
well, he's just like, he haunts a project.
Yeah.
And so then now he's just popping up all over the city. Like it's kind of like a little like, what, did he take the train? Did he take the L?
It is interesting that like of all of the people he could terrorize, he terrorizes like the people in the projects who
Right.
when he could be going to like nice white high rises or something.
He just shows up. You say his name in the mirror, and then he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he gets on, and then he just like, he leaves the projects and like is like waiting for her in a parking garage in Chicago somewhere. And it was a
Yeah,
little,
well,
like,
yeah, there is like that weird thing of her looking a lot like the woman that he was in love with and ending up on the mural, and there is that sort of weird like he's obsessed with her in like a romantic kind of way.
well, yeah, this, which is funny too, is like black dude that's just like trying to get one of these white women.
Even
He's trying real hard. Trying real hard to get one of these white women. It's like pretty funny.
waiting around for centuries. For literal
funny.
centuries.
Be my snow queen. This is so fucking funny.
It is. But also like Tony Todd was like the best part of the movie. He was like, I thought he was great in it. I didn't like his jacket. I thought that was maybe just an ugly jacket. Like I don't know why he's wearing this like fur like long coat.
fur
Is that
coat.
even
Well, he's also wearing a hook.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
Does he need to
he
hide the
seems
hook?
like he's kind of making it up as he goes.
And why was he called Candyman?
Because
of honey.
The honey, yeah. Because wasn't it? It was like
Why
he
wouldn't
was
they
like,
call him Honeyman? Or Bean
because
Man?
that sounds like a different movie.
Like this movie wasn't scary. Like I didn't, even as a kid, I don't know if I was necessarily scared of the movie, as much as like the idea of it, like because it's a fun game to play when you're a kid. Like that's what's scary is playing Candyman or playing Bloody Mary.
Right.
But see, but that's one thing. I think Bloody Mary is a much scarier thing. Like I remember being at my daycare center, which like, and I say it sounds weird like to say daycare center because it sounds like we were really little, but it was actually just this like place you would go until you were in like 5th grade or something like that. And I remember, and it was at this Methodist church in Denver, and they would. So it was kind of like your sort of child community place. And I remember fun, like overnight things where you would and daring each other to say Bloody Mary in the mirror in the, in the bathroom and that kind of shit. It was so prominent and such a scary idea. And the Candyman thing is like nowhere near on the level. Also, bees aren't scary. I love bees.
There were so many bees.
Bees are great. Who doesn't like bees?
Did you guys notice the scene when, like, way at the beginning when they're really playing into all the urban legends and talking about, like, alligators in the sewers, and then when she goes into Candyman's lair and she finds the, like, Halloween candy, and there's a literal razor blade in it.
Which is kind of a cool thing, because that was, like, such a, like, urban myth. Even in the movie, it's kind of like sort of showing off how absurd that would be to actually get, like, it would be the first thing you would notice in your candy.
Yeah.
Would be this gigantic fucking razor blade.
I think for at least a couple Halloweens, I was afraid, or I did sort of like check my candy before I ate it.
Oh, my parents checked it.
Yeah. Oh, I totally remember that.
Yeah.
Your parents checking your candy, yeah.
Were there other urban legends that you guys remember when you were a kid?
The one that I still think about almost every night is the one about the woman who thinks that her dog is licking her feet when she's in bed. And then she finds her dog dead, and she realizes that it's like this man who's been licking her feet at night.
Wait, when you think about this at night, in what context?
Because when I'm sleeping, I have to make sure that my feet are under the covers so they don't get licked by a scary urban legend man.
Bro, that's so weird.
That's a really good one.
I don't know how the actual story went.
One, actually. I'm not sure this is an urban legend.
I honestly have no idea where I heard it. It just haunts me every day of my life.
I don't remember this at all. I don't remember ever hearing anything about an urban legend about some freaky dude who likes toes.
Oh, and like, I don't remember it, but I think the line was like he would whisper in her ear and be like, "That's not your dog."
That's really good though. I think maybe they're probably like.
It was really terrifying.
Honestly, as a woman, now that you tell me that, I'm like, wow, I'm probably gonna start thinking about that now. About just like,
I'm so sorry.
Some creepy dude crawling into my room, like licking my feet.
I mean, yeah, it could happen, but also it's like, ugh.
Guys, you're not helping me get over this right now.
That just seems like such a weird pervert thing.
Oh, yeah.
The local post office guy, and he sneaks in and licks people's feet.
What if it's just a weird ghost?
Like, it sounds like a guy who, like, fixes, like, the machines at the bowling alley. And then it comes out, like, and people are like, oh, that guy?
It definitely feels like it could have been based on a true story.
Classic one, the hook hand guy that, like, terrorizes, like, the couple that's making out in a car.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
They hear scratching on the car, and they get kind of spooked. And the girl gets, like, especially spooked, and then she, like, insists that they leave, and then after they leave and they get home, they, like, find, like, a hook on the passenger door handle. And the legend is that there was a hook man there the whole time. Which, when I say that out loud, that seems like the dumbest, worst story. I was like, I don't know, why was I scared of that?
When I hear it now, it makes me think, like, oh, that sounds like somebody needed help.
I was trying to think of, things that I heard when I was younger that seemed scary, that weren't true. And I think growing up in Denver, I thought about how, like, neighborhoods were like bad neighborhoods, like East Colfax or like Five Points, like growing up was like, that's so dangerous, which I think is a lot of what I think how a lot of people thought of Cabrini Green in real life, which was like historically also actually crime ridden, low income housing, and a lot of like historically a lot of issues since
super dangerous.
Super dangerous, yeah. They actually did film scenes at Cabrini Green. They could have just said like an unnamed projects, but I thought it was interesting to use a real neighborhood and try to like bring some sort of authenticity to it.
That was because it was so notoriously, like famously bad. It was like, you know, it's like saying Compton but Chicago. Like it was like, you know, that you almost establish the world a little bit just by saying that, because it was so notorious at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you think that's a cheat, or do you think that's smart? Or
I think it's smart.
Yeah.
I think it's smart. It's just like, it's like to build the world and also raise the stakes in the sense of like, you know, hey, we're in Chicago, and you know, they're going to this notorious housing project that like everyone knows. It's, you know what I mean? Like I kind of take it like it's part of the world building. I still think it's an interesting idea, the idea of a haunted project. And I also thought it was interesting that she's like, you know, my current building used to be a project. Like her like beautiful apartment.
Yeah.
What I realized watching is like another big trope that came up that I don't think we've addressed yet is that if there's an animal in the movie, that animal is dying. That animal's going to be very dead.
They show that entire decapitated Rottweiler head.
Yeah.
So much blood.
So much blood. That's what the first time that I saw that scene and Anne Marie is like wildly screaming, I thought the baby was dead too, because I was like, there's no way all that blood is just the dog.
Right.
It took me a while to
From this
realize
dog.
that the baby was just missing.
Yeah.
People were saying that Jordan Peele's company is going to remake it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, Jordan Peele is producing, and it's not quite it's actually a continuation of the story, and it is directed by Nia DaCosta, and I've watched the trailer too many times at this point, but it is what we know about it based on the trailer. It seems to be that the main character is the baby. There's an adult man in the trailer.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I didn't pick that up the first time, but I did some internet research, and because
she's
Anne Marie,
in it.
the really hysterical lady, she's in the trailer, and when you see I think some people did some internet sleuthing where if you look at the names of the characters that they've released, the main character is named Anthony McCoy, which would be the name of the baby, which I think is very interesting. So I think when you rewatch the trailer now and you go back and he's saying how he has like a connection to this place,
That makes so much sense.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think the movie that exists is bad. I do think, but I think there are some really interesting ideas that, if executed with a good script and current, like, sort of sensibilities, I think could be really, really good. So I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Me too.
I'm excited for it to have a point of view.
Oh, yeah.
an actual point of view that's successful. And I think it will.
I would also recommend there's also the sequel. And there's also
Which
the
is
third one. There's 3
I won't
Candyman
do it.
movies.
Wait, Tuyet, have you watched the second one?
Yeah.
Because Candyman dies
Yes.
at the end of this one, at the first one. So what's the
Yes.
deal about him coming back?
Well, let's talk also about Candyman's death, because that doesn't make any sense. 'Cause
He's
an apparition, I guess, and somehow
he got burned.
But he can get
Yeah,
burned.
but, I mean, I feel like there's so many... Doesn't Jason die from fire at one point or something like that? Like, there are so many things where...
Michael Myers does.
Yeah, Michael Myers, yeah. There are so many of those kind of things, and I think it's kind of, this is interesting and works to me.
it was only hard for me in this movie because he can transport and because he's kind of a
Yeah.
ghost.
Right.
And so I think that for me was like, and it's not like they didn't burn him. I think in a lot of, it's when ghost stories, when there's like big fires and like ghost stories, it's usually like the place where they died,
the thing
or
they
the sort
were
of physical
attached
space where they died
to,
that gets
yeah.
burned.
Right.
Whereas like he died in this like bonfire, which maybe is the site of his death, and the fire was part of it. I didn't really care that much because it was like, oh, that's fine.
Well, yeah, and I didn't really necessarily take it so much at like, oh, he's dead, but more like he's been defeated.
Right.
here.
Right.
Which is how they kind of bring him back in the
Right.
sequels. The second one, Farewell to the Flesh, is
What a title.
goes much deeper into his backstory. I like that Troy's just shaking his head. The second one goes like real deep into much deeper into his backstory, and you know how he was like a painter and kind of an aristocrat. I
Wait,
guess.
what was he lynched for again?
For falling in love with a white woman.
Right. Oh, right.
Yes. So the story of Candyman. It's the whole premise of the
No,
movie.
like,
It is literally the driving force of the movie.
which is what I thought, and then I was like, maybe I'm remembering that, because that was what I was saying earlier that I thought was so funny about it. Is like he was like, "Well, I'm gonna get this one. Well, I'm gonna get that white girl." That's so fucking funny to me.
Would you guys call this a morality tale or a revenge tale? It's like, don't stereotype people, or they will come and kill you. Maybe it's
I don't
both.
think anything about this movie is.
I
that
don't think it ultimately
deep. Yeah,
got
I don't
there.
think there's
That's me.
anything about that film that is that deep.
Yes.
I almost feel weird calling it a film. That is a fucking movie if I ever saw one.
Yeah.
And now this is a great time for
Let's
badges.
do it.
Robin?
I have a few. First one is the cleanup crew badge, because all that blood, holy hell, that's a lot of blood. Like, could you imagine shooting that scene and then like having to go back and do it again and like having to take continuity photos of like where every splatter of
I
blood
don't
is?
think they really kept the
Maybe
continuity
not.
photos.
Maybe. Yeah. I have the James Earl Jones badge for Tony Todd's amazing booming voice. The Professor Karen badge goes to Helen for her just overall shittiness. And then my last one is the bees badge, because so many bees. I actually read a piece of trivia that Tony Todd negotiated a $1,000 bonus for every time he got stung by a bee on set. And he got stung 23 times.
Whoa.
So he made $23,000 just from being stung by bees on set of Candyman. So
Pretty good.
honestly, if that's all that comes out of this movie, like, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Good for him.
As an actor, that makes me go like, SAG really should have put that in the deal. Because that would be tight. If there was like constantly like a thing where it's like, you worked with this fucking dog bites you, you get 20 grand.
Be like slapping bees left and right.
I wanted to give the 6'5" award to Tony Todd for literally just being 6'5".
He is so
He's very
tall.
tall. And there's like a story about how early on Eddie Murphy had been considered for the role of Candyman, but ultimately did not get it because they thought he was too short. And so it went to Tony Todd, who is 6'5" and a
What
great
would the
physical
world have been
presence.
like?
That is such a different movie.
Right?
That
Can you
is
imagine?
such a different fucking movie.
I feel like it's a whole different, like, 30 years if
That's like-
Eddie Murphy plays.
If Eddie Murphy's Candyman, first of all, I probably would have seen it 20 times by now. And it probably would have been hilarious. Because I've seen Vampire in Brooklyn.
That's all I can picture when I read that, like, that Eddie Murphy had been considered. I can only
And
picture him.
Vampire in Brooklyn is bad. It's so bad. So I had one for Blackest Scene, which I still think is the lineup at the police station where they're all going like, "I'm the Candyman," and then they step forward. "I'm the Candyman," and then they step back, and then it's just like a lineup. And here's the fun thing about that: they're all wearing the same coat. So you really think it's like, so they went out and they found all these different black dudes who are all wearing the exact same Candyman coat.
Wait, or do you think the police went out and
Bought
bought
5
coats?
The police did not go out and buy the same outfit. They didn't do that. They just found this project uniform jacket. I had one for Weirdest Choice, which is when Helen is in the casket. They didn't put a wig on her. They just put flowers on her burned scalp. Like, what shithole fucking mortuary did she go through where they were like, we're all out of wigs. Just run down to the grocery store and get some flowers, and they just put flowers on her burned scalp.
I feel like they cut that shot a weird amount of times too.
It's
like, we get it.
It's just such a strange idea. Like, well, in the first place, I didn't see anything to make me think she was going to die from that. But what mortuary does that? What shitty mortuary is just like...
Maybe it was like an expensive wig or something, and her awful husband was like, forget about it. Just put some flowers on.
Come on. They would put a wig on her. And then my last one was Best Tits. Virginia Madsen's
Pretty good.
The winner
Pretty good.
is the husband's
Stacey.
little mistress.
Yes.
When she runs out and she's she's just like braless in this like t-shirt, just nipples pointing.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there going like, "No, I'm not hungry." And then she goes out, just tits swinging under this t-shirt, and then just takes an uncovered plate of unspecified meat out of the fridge and just starts weirdly cutting it and crying with like just boobs hanging out.
Yeah.
And it was just very strange. But she wins.
Yeah, the way she's swinging it around and she's like slapping the knife, like this knife on her
on the
hand,
edge
like
of
it's a
it.
baseball
Yeah, it just
bat.
is like this very strange kind of thing. But I was like, okay, she wins because Virginia Madsen has like the thing, she's in the bathtub, and that's great. But it's, just I gotta say, whoever the mistress was with the no bra t-shirt, that's such a like 90s horror movie choice.
I was gonna say, I don't think it's a horror movie in the 90s without this like braless, like super prominent
like just like
very
holy
prominent
shit,
nipples.
This movie just got good.
And they got it in just under the wire too. It was like
She
toward
had no
the end.
lines, really.
It was a good performance for that character.
She was terrible.
No, when she,
So bad.
I wrote down because I love the moment when Virginia Madsen walks through the door and she turns around and sees her and like kind of falls weirdly off the ladder.
I was, like, startled.
I was like, that's a good.
I did like that.
Well, it was but she was so bad because she's like, "Oh, I bet you want to grab that phone, don't you?" And she's like, "No." It's just like the most. It's so terrible.
Cool. We'll find Troy on Twitter probably.
Yeah, follow me on
Instagram.
Twitter and Instagram.
TikTok, Snapchat.
I'm on
What do you do on
the
Pinterest?
I'm
You got
on
a cool
Twitter
Pinterest
and
board?
the Instagram at Troy Walker ESQ, like Troy Walker S. So follow me, please. God.
I already followed
No, I mean
you.
to people who listen to the podcast. I give good Twitter. It's good Twitter.
Bunk 237, a horror movie podcast, stars Tuyet and Robin Zlotnick as the final girls of Bunk 237, and Chris Charpentier as camp director Chris. The show is produced by me, Shane Segura. Our theme song is written and performed by Dan Zlotnick, and our outro music is written and performed by Talene Khalid. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and it may be featured on an upcoming episode. Have a suggestion for a movie? Then follow us on Instagram at Bunk237Pod and Twitter at Bunk237. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded.